Hey Bashers, in this video we're doing RC Jumping 101, and this, as always, is geared towards new people. So if you're new to the hobby, perhaps this video will answer some of the questions you have about how to control your car when you get it up in the air. You know, not everybody does that, but if you have a hankering to get on a ramp or hit a good ramp in nature, understanding how your car functions and what each car is designed to do makes a big difference. And understanding when to use the throttle, when to use the brakes, and all of that plays a big role. This video is geared to help you understand what you should work on to get the most longevity and fun out of your vehicle. This would be pretty informative. I hope it's helpful. Check this out. All right, first off, there's a few things we need to discuss about the vehicle themselves, depending on what it is you're going to jump from, anything from a small 10 scale or even smaller to the big vehicles. What it comes down to is wheelbase is one of the most important things. And on the bench back here, let's get this out of the way so you can see. But on the bench back here, we have two very different vehicles. So we have the MT8 here. And in a lot of the footage, you're going to see the Outcast, but they're both short wheelbase stunt trucks. Now, this is a highly powered vehicle, and the tires grow a lot, which gives you a lot of inertia in the tires. But being a short wheelbase, it doesn't take that much to get it to change its angle in the air, so it's really susceptible to throttle control. However, sitting next to it is the Arma Big Rock 6S, and this is a monster. Look at the wheelbase on that. It's got a long wheelbase, so it takes a lot more pressure to get it to rotate in the air. So this will be much more stable for jumping, but throttle still plays a big role. And wheelbase, depending on the size of your vehicle, the longer the wheelbase, the more time generally you have to make corrections in the air because they rotate slower. So a long wheelbase vehicle will take longer to rotate, but there's something that plays along with that, and that's tire size. Now, I'm using two seriously opposing tire sizes here for this example so you can see what's going on. This is a Mojave tire, and believe it or not, this mounts right on the Creighton. Anything of the 6S platform from Arma, these will fit right on them. Now, the thing is, there's not very much mass here. It's not very heavy, but indicator here, it's not very big around. Now, here's an aftermarket tire, and this is a Badland, and this goes on the X-Max. Yeah, this is an X-Max tire. The idea here is, see the size? This is also very heavy, so there's a lot of extra weight on the outside. In order to turn these, it takes a certain amount of power. Now, if you've got a very powerful vehicle, you can spin these pretty quickly. The thing is when you rotate this, the counter rotation goes on the chassis. That's how you get the chassis to stand up or nose down, depending on what you're doing with your throttle. So tire size will indicate how your car's going to handle in the air. Now, the thing about that is every RC handles differently. They do, from the power that's in there to the drivetrain, how things connect to the wheels, the rotation of the wheels, all of that plays a role. So let's say you have a 6S car, and my version 4 Creighton ran 3S, 4S, or 6S. Okay, so with 3S in it, you could hardly get it to rotate in the air because there wasn't enough power against the tires to get them to spin fast enough, use that kinetic energy to alter the trajectory of the chassis. So the angle or the attitude of the chassis on the throttle brings the front up. So the more you counter rotate against those tires, the easier it comes up. But the farther you get away from center with your wheelbase, the slower that reaction is because it takes more power to turn a wider area than it does a small area. That's why the stunt trucks are generally short vehicles. So if you're going to do multiple backflips like this, the shorter vehicles will do that easier. But the shorter the wheelbase, the faster they rotate, the quicker your responses have to be to brake in the right place and get it down on its wheels. So the car itself, if you can take a few nice easy jumps and get a feel for the car, just nice and slow, get the feel for what it's doing, that'll give you an indicator as to how touchy your vehicle is going to be. I would highly recommend against lining up with a ramp and giving it all it's got until you understand your vehicle, because you're going to wind up buying parts at some point. Even the guys like us that have been doing this quite a long time, still have our moments. In the videos here, you're going to see the Outcast. And we came down hard one time and it just blew the rear differential apart, pulled everything apart because I landed hard right on that. It even bent the EXB shock tower because my timing was off. And that's the real issue, is building your timing. In order to get started in this, I would recommend getting a fairly shallow ramp, 30 degrees, something that's not going to send you way up in the air, and hit it really slow. Just spend a battery, hit it nice and slow, jump about 12 feet out, get the feel for what your car is going to do. Slowly increase your distance as you become familiar with your car, because that's a huge deal. Once you understand how that car reacts, then you can start to stretch things out and add a little more power and do it in increments, because if you have to think about what you're going to do, you're already behind and you're going to have problems. What it comes down to is building the reflexes for when to get on the throttle and when to get off the brakes. Now keep in mind that when you get on the throttle, there's timing involved in that too. So if you're looking for good distance, you want to keep your car nice and flat. So that means get your power and speed up first, keep your front wheels down, line up with whatever you're going to hit, and keep that down. If you panic or get too excited, that might be a better way to put it. If you get too excited and give it some extra power, the front end will come up. Because if you got something with good sized tires, it'll counter rotate that chassis and it'll stand it up. And here's a shot of that. When you do that, it'll slap the ramp or whatever you're hitting, and that'll take a lot of the inertia out, but it'll also cause unpredictability when you come off the ramp, because you don't know what the rebound's going to be. When the chassis hits the ramp, when you get the coil springs tightened down and then they come up, you get a little bit of a recoil, and that can cause unpredictability. So the real trick to that is get your speed up and just hit the ramp. Don't panic, don't pull. Don't get anything like that, because you've already got your speed. You don't need to add any at the end. The thing about it is, when you eject from the ramp, if you're looking for distance, you don't want to be on the throttle when you hit the ramp. You want to get your speed up first and more or less coast through the ramp, and that'll keep the front end nice and level like this. So it'll keep it nice and level out, and the smaller you can make your footprint going through the air. In other words, let's say I'm jumping this one and I'm trying to get it as far as I can. If you stay on the throttle, it will stand it up like this. Now, push that through the air, okay? That is not aerodynamic. But if you coast over the ramp and don't give it throttle on the ramp, it'll come through the air like this. And that is a much more aerodynamic way to go through the air, and you'll get better distance. Now, when you get on the throttle, once you're off the ramp, it'll pull the front end up because it'll counter-rotate against those tires. And the larger those tires grow, and that's the thing, these grow, at least on this car they do. When they grow, the diameter is bigger and it causes more power against the chassis. That's how you get your backflips. So when you come off the ramp, pin that throttle down and it'll do this. And that's just the way that works. That's physics. It's got to counter-rotate against the chassis. It'll rotate the car. If you don't get on the throttle coming off of the ramp, it'll run fairly level. Our ramps are designed with a swoop and a flat area, and the flat area levels the car out so it ejects at the same exact angle each time. Some of the ramps are built like this and they don't really have a flat spot, and it can cause the rear end to kick up. Ramp design plays a pretty good role in that, and that's a different video. Still, in this one, when you come off the ramp and you're not on the throttle, it should keep that attitude that it had coming off the ramp. Then what you adjust in the air. An example is, and keep in mind that if you do this stuff, you're going to buy parts because it takes a while to learn how to do this. But even those of us that have been doing it a long time, we buy parts too, because not every launch is the same. Still, when you come off the ramp and you hit the brakes, now that stops this. What happens when you take the energy out of this? It's placed on the chassis, and that's where it starts to roll the other way, because the inertia of the tires and wheels has a certain amount of energy in it as they rotate. When you stop those, you ever notice how people bring the front end down? That's from hitting the brakes. Now, if you have a really short wheelbase car and it's touchy, and you got your brakes cranked all the way up and you pin the brakes, it's going to come over. And they come over in unpredictable ways. And the reason it comes down in an unpredictable way when you do a front flip is if you don't come off exactly right, and this is common, everyone. This is common. This is how this works. But if you don't come off the ramp exactly right and get the brakes, there's no more rotation in the tires. Okay, the rotation, when this is spinning, it has a gyroscopic attitude to it, so it helps keep the car relatively straight because of the mass in rotation. Okay, when you stop this, that's gone. Now the car is basically a brick, and it can tumble in any direction it wants to. And if you got a good launch, it'll tumble straight over, and it's beautiful when it does it. Now the thing is, before you get to the ground, you have to time it to get on the throttle to flatten it out so it'll land on its wheels, because that's the only safe way to land it. So definitely give yourself some time before you try and do that, because it's really hard on the vehicle. Front flips break more than any of the other flips out there, even though they do more of the back flips. If you take a look at the percentage of it, most of your damage comes from trying to do front flips because of that lack of control. When the wheels and tires are no longer spinning, that control is gone. All right, so let's talk about basic car design for a minute, because what you have for an RC will make a real difference in how your jumping is going to work out. Now, one of them that is, in my opinion, one of the best jumpers out there is the buggy style. Now, this is an Arma, this is a Typhon 3S, and this is an amazing car. The 6S is also amazing, but many manufacturers make this style. Durability plays a good role in how long these things last, but with some minor upgrades, most of them can be made fairly durable if you can get them down on your wheels. Look at the cut on that. That is super aerodynamic, and these are inherently stupid fast. They just are really quick. These are great jumpers. The way their balance is, most of them are designed basically the same way. Some are race cars. I wouldn't recommend jumping those, but more of the RTR stuff, that's more along the line. So this is my preferred jumper, but it's not the only one out there. I really like this one, and these are everywhere. Everyone's got a Creighton, it seems like. These things are all over the place, and these are fun. They're durable. They go everywhere. And it's not about Arma. It's about the design and style. Corelli makes these, you know, most companies make something similar to this. This one's got a medium wheelbase, so it's not short and it's not long. This is kind of a jack of all trades. And this rig right here, these things have a lot of power, so control in the air is there. This is a great one to learn on because, like I say, it's not a short wheelbase, so it gives you that little bit of extra time that you wouldn't have with, say, an Outcast. Still, there's another one over here, and these, let's be honest, these really shouldn't come off the ground. 2 feet maximum as far as that goes. You can jump these a little bit, but look at this. Look at that body. That is amazing. When you get this up in the air like this, it's a parachute. This will grab air. It makes them really hard to deal with, and the suspension is really short. The arms are really short on it, so there's not a lot of travel there. So the impact afterward is pretty brutal as well. So I wouldn't recommend jumping these if you're going for any kind of distance or anything like that. If you have a small ramp and you're jumping in the line of, say you have one in the driveway and you're jumping 10 feet long, but maybe 2 feet off the ground, these are fine for that. They'll do that all day long, but they're really not flyers. And that's the thing. If you want something that's really going to get it done, you're going to want something that has a little more of the Typhon style design or the Creighton style design. And like I say, we're not picking a specific brand here. This is all about what you're looking for when you pick something to actually get off the ground. But no matter what you pick, you have to take the time to get your reflexes down. And it's like anything. If you're learning how to play guitar, you have to learn how to do the basics before you can rip. It's just how that works. Some people learn faster than others. Some people are naturals at it, and that can be frustrating when you actually have to work at it yourself. But at the same time, it's a skill worth learning, because at the end of the day, when you're ripping along, some people just turn it loose and let it fly. And we have Nate in our group, and he likes to do that. He likes to hold it down and let it just do what it's going to do. and that's his style. And he doesn't hurt people, so he's cool to be with because he does it away from people, but he's entertaining to watch. At the same time, if you don't look at where you're going, and what I mean by that is you don't see this on the footage when we're out, but I will stop just before I'm going to do something, and I'll do this, and I'll look back, and we'll edit that out because that's boring. But at the same time, what I'm doing is I'm taking stock of where I'm going to see what might be in the way, especially when you're trying to hit a ramp. The thing about it is a lot of people will stand directly behind the ramp and they will launch from that because it gives you a straight line of sight to the ramp. And that makes sense because you have to get used to being able to get the car there. Not all RCs track true. Not all of them are easy to drive into a specific location. And if you've got a 3-foot ramp, that can be kind of difficult to hit, especially when you're trying to control a car that you're new to. Now, here's the thing about that. You watch our footage and you see us watching the cars from the side. Okay. We stand out in danger to film this stuff, so we get in front of the ramp. So the ramp is to my right, for example, and it's probably 15 feet away from me, and I'm standing, and if I catch that wrong, that car's coming straight at me, and I know this. But the hard part is to stand at the angle, get a look at the landmarks. In other words, you have to look at where your car needs to track to hit the ramp when you can't look straight at the ramp. Definitely stand behind the ramp to learn. That's the best way you can do it, but don't stand too far back if you're learning. Stay nice and close to the ramp so you can make sure your car gets there. Spread your feet, put your car in the middle, and just practice driving at the ramp, because like I say, not all cars track true, and you have to get to know your car. Once you get used to hitting the ramp, you need to be close enough to see what the car is doing beyond the ramp so you can land it correctly. If you're learning, try to land in something soft. If you can run in the driveway and land in the grass, perfect. That is some of the best that you can get because grass is kind of soft. And it has a bonus. It helps keep the car clean too, so that's kind of neat. But at the same time, you have to be able to see past the ramp to control the attitude of your car so you can get used to landing it flat. That's the real point there. Now, when you really want to see what's going on, you want to stand somewhere alongside of the ramp. You don't want to be in front of it. Don't ever do that because it puts you in danger. I accept the risk. I'm the one driving. So if I do hit myself, it's literally my fault because I knew better than to stand there, but I was trusting my driver's ability. And I've hit myself a few times and it sucks. It does. If you catch one of those cars, they can weigh anywhere from 3 pounds to 30 pounds, depending on what you're driving. And with the speed involved, you can really get hurt. Especially if it hits you in the face or something like that, it can really get hurt. And a couple of the channels that I follow, one of them got hit in the face and it looked terrible. And Speed, if you're watching this, you know I'm talking about you. You took that one felony right to the face and it was ugly to see. And it's a good reminder to everyone out there that these things are dangerous. So if you're going to work with ramps or you're going to work in a natural area where you can get some air, try to stand in a safe location so you don't get hurt, and try to make sure no one is downrange of it when you do this. Now, at the same time, you can't always stand directly behind the ramp. And what we do is we picked up a couple of gears that are about 8 inches and they're 1/4 inch wide. And we painted them orange and we go back 10 feet from the ramp and we drop one on each side. And you don't see those very often. We don't use them very often anymore, but we did when we were learning how to hit these specific ramps. And what we do is we'll back up 10 feet and we'll put them at 4 feet wide because our ramps are 4 feet here. So we'll put them at 4 feet wide. And then when you stand alongside the ramp, you can aim at those orange discs and that will give me an indicator as to where I need to be to hit the ramp. And if you watched our pivot ramp video, you might have seen those out on the asphalt while I was standing down in a swale and I could barely see what I was going for. The upside is if I hit the ramp, it was going over me. But if I missed the ramp, it'd come right off into the swale at me. So I needed those indicators to let me know where I needed the car to be. And being 10 feet back gives me enough time to brake and stop before I get to the ramp, or right about there. So if you're new to this, I would recommend a couple of flat indicators just back from the ramp so you can see where you've got to line up to get there, because lining up can really be a problem being able to get to it. Now, let's say, for example, you're running in nature. Okay, you get to an area where there's a really nice roll and it looks cool, and man, I'm going to hit that. Watch this, right? Okay, so you line up to it, and my recommendation is pause right there. Make a precursor pass over it. Okay, get a precursor pass over it to see how that reacts, because just because it's a knoll in nature doesn't mean it's not going to pitch your car funny, because they're designed differently, each one. So when you see something that looks cool, make a nice easy pass over it first and see how your car reacts. If your car reacts fairly normally, great, back up, hit it with some steam, see what's going on, and if that worked really good, let her all hang out and see what happens if that's what you're into. I know I would do it, but that's just because that's where I find my thrill, is to push these as hard as they'll go. And none of it scares me because I'm fairly safe about how I do it. I don't do it around people generally. And as far as, I don't let any of my friends be out in front if I'm going to do something stupid, right? So this could be something stupid, but when I pin it and I get full into it and I hit that knoll, that's where it'll shine. It'll either come off stupid because it's not an even surface, or it'll be one of the best shots I got all day. And I love doing that kind of thing. Still, at the same time, if you're going to do that, every lump in nature is different. So you can't come off one and go, oh, I'm going to do that to that one. Test it first. I mean, just let's be safe about it. Test it first to see how your car reacts to it. Because if you catch something that pitches the ass end of the car over and it catches the nose, now you got a cartwheel, and that could run for 50 feet if it's going downhill at all. And you never know who could be there and be in the way, or you could hit something solid and break it. Always pre-test your ramps. All right, so there we go. RC Jumping 101, the basics. And I hope that it was informative enough to be helpful. I hope it didn't get preachy in any way, because that's not what this is designed for. If you've never done this and you have questions, hopefully we answered them in this one. And this is the basics. This isn't everything you need to know, and everybody has their own style. This should help you get into it and do it fairly safely. And if you follow the safety precautions, you should be able to get some longevity out of your car until you get your car under control. And what I mean by that is when you can hold the radio, and hang on a second. Here we go. Let's do it like this. If you can hold the radio in your hand, and I like to hold mine right here. I don't know what that's about. It has to do with my racing days, I'm sure. But I like to hold my radio right here. And if I can hold my radio right here and I never think about my radio, if I'm just thinking about what I want the car to do, and I get to a point where I can just make it happen without actually having to think about it, I'm almost there. That's where that is. I'm almost there. If you have to think about your controls, you're not quite there yet. So keep working until it automatically go for the brakes. You automatically give it a little gas instead of pinning it all the way. I keep telling everybody, this isn't an on switch. It's a variable speed control. You'd be surprised how many new people will pick up an RC and just grab it. And they'll hold it. And they think that's how it's supposed to be run. But it's not. That's dangerous, and it breaks things. When you run one of these, don't forget this is actually a throttle pedal, just like in your car. A little goes a long ways, and a long ways buys parts if you don't know what you're doing. Always pre-look at where you're going so you can avoid any obstacles. Learn to back out of the throttle and drive around things instead of just holding on to the throttle to see what happens. If you haven't already, don't forget to bash that like button and help our content spread. We love helping the community. That's why we do this. Don't forget our memberships are open, And when you join the membership, it helps us continue to help our community, which is what we're really up to. If you have anything you'd like to add to this video, please feel free to get down in the comments down below and help others along the way. For AJ Jam Studios, I'm AJ saying, keep bashing.